Now, as we've been hearing, energy prices in England, Wales and Scotland have fallen to their lowest level for 2 years. That's because of the new price cap from the regulator Ofgem. That comes into force.
There are also some other changes to household bills. Peter's been drilling down on the details. Hard to work out whether you're going to... He's trying, there's so much of it, to work out whether you're going to come off better or worse.
I think everyone's circumstances are going to be different, as ever. But this month, sort of more than any other year, there's some really big changes that could really impact household finances. So it's really worth sitting down and going through, right, what's coming in, what's going out, because it may well have changed quite significantly. Let's attempt to dig through the details. Let's start with the positives, shall we? So from today, the main rate of the national living wage is going up by more than £1 an hour. And all workers aged 21 and above, not 23 now, will be entitled to it. Now, also, working parents of 2-year-olds in England, well, they should be able to access 15 hours of free childcare a week from today. But a number of providers say they think they're going to struggle to offer those extra hours. As part of his budget last month, the Chancellor announced another cut in national insurance, a 2p cut this time. Now, that takes effect from Saturday, the 6th of April, not today. That and lower energy bills, well, that's probably all the good news. On the other hand, water bills, well, they're going up in England and Wales, and there's a bigger increase coming for Scotland. These percentages here, they work out at about an average of around £30 or more each year on top of your bill at the moment. And it's a similar story when it comes to council tax. 3/4 of local authorities are expected to put bills up by the maximum possible amount this year. We're saying this is England and Wales. In Scotland, charges have been frozen. The TV licence fee, well, that's going to go up too, to nearly £170 for most people. On top of that, get ready for this, lots of mobile phone and broadband providers, they're going to be charging more, even if you're in the middle of a contract. Vehicle tax, NHS dentist fees, the cost of a new passport, all of those things also, you guessed it, going up. And that's before we talk about rent and mortgage costs. There's so much to be aware of at the moment. And the advice is that now is a really good time to do a bit of an audit of your income and your bills, because as I was explaining, there are so many changes. But there is lots of help out there too, including on the BBC News website, Ben and Nina. It's so difficult, but hopefully you've got a guest who can tell us what we should be doing.
Thank you, Peter. That was comprehensive. We are joined now by Consumer Affairs journalist Harry Kind from Which. Can we start with energy, because that's what everybody's talking about at the moment. And yes, the caps come down, but we got this question from Patricia. How are we now paying more in standing charges? This isn't a price cut at all, is it? We live in Merseyside, some of the highest standing charges in the country. Why is that, and why is it not the same across the board?
Yeah, we've got this variation in that standing charge, so the price that you're paying for, a cold and dark house before you turn on the electricity or the gas. And you do have that variation across the country, because that is the cost of keeping up the network, which is supposed to be different in different parts of the country. It's cheapest in London. And that has increased. You would have to be using barely anything for the increase in the standing charge to cancel out the decrease in the unit prices that we've seen today. So for almost everyone, it's going to be good news. But it does mean that for people who've got a smaller house, a one-bed flat, they're not going to see anywhere near the benefits of this cut in the price cap that someone who's got a massive house, they have really high heating bills, maybe they've got family who need expensive medical equipment that uses a lot of electricity. They will be the big beneficiaries of this, whereas everyone else not as much.
And we tend to talk now, don't we, about stuff coming down, stuff going up, and we're trying to work out what it means for your individual budget. I think it's fair to say that overall, given what inflation's done and the price rises, even if stuff's coming down, it's still higher than it was just a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. We're not really seeing any prices going to below before before Corona, before the war in Ukraine. And so even as our energy bills come down to the lowest in 2 years, they're still hundreds of pounds higher than they were pre-2019. And so everyone is still paying these higher figures. We've had food price inflation went up to double digits. It's now down to only let's say 8% increasing, but that still means that the prices are higher than they were before. And so when people kind of talk about the cost of living crisis crisis maybe being over or coming to an end, actually people are now kind of getting used to this new way of having to spend a whole lot more money, which is why we've seen some of the highest levels of people missing bills. Yep. So really essential things like your energy bills, like mortgage payments, like credit card payments, those are at the third highest level that they've been in the last 2 years in the last month. And that's really scary because it means people get bad credit scores. They might even end up being evicted. So it's nowhere near over for people.
Is there a danger as the cap comes down, we head into warmer temperatures, also a time when we're spending more time out of the house, so we might get lulled into a false sense of security and think, oh, great, prices have come right down. But then come the winter, we're in for a nasty shock. What's a good way of combating that?
Well, that's why the energy companies will give you a direct debit, which is supposed to be pretty consistent every month, even though you're using less in the summer. So if you look at your energy bills and you see, well, I'm not using much this month, but I'm paying in more than that, maybe I should lower my direct debit. Maybe think again and think, keep it at that level, build up that credit so that in the winter, when you are using more energy, you are just eating into that rather than losing money.
We used to talk a lot, didn't we, about switching to get a better deal, and then all the prices went up and that just wasn't a thing because no one could get a fixed rate or try and shop around for a cheaper deal. Are we getting back to that point where it's worth looking around again?
Yeah, switching's back. Great fun. So it might not be worth fixing. Right. There's a difference between those two. You can still look around, shop around and see, is there a variable tariff? There are some variable tariffs that say will always be about 3% less than the price cap. That way, you know that you're making that saving. There'll be some fixes that maybe if you want that guarantee of a consistent rate, they're worth looking at, but prices could come down again in July. That's what's predicted. But also, if you're someone who's, say, got an electric car and a smart meter, then you want to get yourself on a tariff which has got a really cheap rate of electricity at night, like the old Economy 7, more expensive in the day, same for people with heat pumps. So it is time to shop around, but don't necessarily kind of handcuff yourself to a deal which may well not be a deal in 3 months' time.
It's just good to know there are options out there, finally. It's been so long.
Just a word for anyone that might run a small business, because we were talking to one of the business ministers a little earlier, championing this rise in the national minimum wage. Good news, because you get more than £1 extra, and also applies to younger people as well, 21 now, isn't it? But we've had Katie messages. She says, I run a small business in North Yorkshire. Wage rise having a severe knock-on effect. I can't afford to employ 3 people that now are in this wage bracket. She says she has to let one go. She says it's all well and good the government announcing that they're going to pay more, but it's actually those small businesses that are paying it. And that's the rub, isn't it? Great news if you're getting it, but the business that employs you has to be able to afford it.
Yes, and those businesses ultimately will hopefully have more business because there is more money in the economy to be spent in those businesses. Okay. And so if you look at the impact of the minimum wage over the last 20 years, what the Resolution Foundation says is one of the most successful economic policies of our time. The theory is that we all have more money and that it does boost these small businesses. And hopefully, as as prices come down, as inflation starts to stabilise, as we get a little bit more secure, we can all go back to the high street, spend our money in these businesses that need our support, and hopefully that increases the number of jobs out there.
Oh, ending on that note of optimism. Thank you. We need it at the moment, don't we, looking out to the economy. Thank you, Harry. Good to see you.
Good to see you.